Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Derwent Chromaflow Colored pencils. And just for transparency, these pencils were provided to me by Derwent. I'm not otherwise paid or told what to say, or they don't even make requests of what to say. They just gave me the product and then I get to tell you guys what I thought about them. So with these pencils, I was under the impression, and I think that is still the case, they are more of a student grade pencil. Based on the price alone, these are extremely inexpensive, and they're not expected to compete with like the Derwent Lightfast pencils, which you're going to pay more for Lightfast colors. These are intended, my understanding is, for more of an entry-level pencil. So I didn't expect much, and I'm not sure if that's why my opinion on them is quite what it is, because I wasn't expecting much going in. And I say that not because I didn't think they'd be good for student grade, it's just I'm a professional artist, I'm looking for professional quality pencils. So we've got the box here. The artwork on this tin is done by artist Kinsey Lane. So those of you who have the Derwent Lightfast pencils, just fun little fact here, that the artwork on the top, the tin of those, is done by Jessie Lane. Kinsey is his wife. They have whippets. They're awesome people. Anyway, just thought that was kind of cool. So looking at the colors that come in the set of 24, it feels like a very complete set. Sometimes when you get smaller sets, you feel like, oh, that red's a little bit too orange. I would have liked a red. Not with these. This was a good set of colors. I did not struggle to mix additional colors from this. So if somebody were getting started with colored pencils, honestly, as far as color goes, this would be all of the colors you really need to get started. So we're gonna go into this more at the end of the video, but I do want to make this very clear early on. They're not Lightfast. These are not intended to compete with the Lightfast line of colored pencils. They're intended, from my understanding, from what I've read on their frequently asked questions page, which we're gonna go over later, that these are for, you know, your entry-level type pencils to get you started. You're not going to expect these at this price point to be Lightfast. The Lightfast pigments, very expensive, and these pencils are very not expensive, which is both kind of happy and sad. Great for those getting started with colored pencil, not so much for those of us who want a nice wax-based pencil. Speaking of, these are a wax-based pencil. Let's go ahead and head over to the artwork that I completed with these and talk a bit more about how they perform. And then after, we will go over the frequently asked questions that Derwent has provided for these pencils. Before we get started, if you are members over at Patreon, make sure to head over where you've got the nearly real time for everything, almost 2-hour long tutorial available for you of this right now. If you are unfamiliar with Patreon, for as little as $4 a month, you get access to all of my longer tutorials. I have a new one every single week, and when you sign up, you get instant access to all of my past longer tutorials. There are over 200 available for you to watch now. If you want to see what type of videos I do have available, I will have a link to my Patreon video library in the video description. For this one, I am working on a 11 by 7.5 inch piece of Stonehenge. Now, the really crazy thing about this, I finished this piece in 4 hours. That's a kind of unheard of in colored pencil for something this size, unless you're working on a sanded paper where color layers down faster. So that was very, very interesting. And why I finished it in the first night, I was just having fun. They layered well, they blended well, and you're gonna see that as I continue to layer this in. I'm going to blend with odorless mineral spirits, but I also blended with burnishing, and every method I used here for blending worked so well. The other thing that I found to be very interesting with these pencils, look at all the start and stop points as I switch directions and overlap things. I'm using absolutely terrible techniques here. I'm nearly scribbling. I mean, very, very messy. What I wanted to test was how these are going to work for most beginners. Most beginners aren't going to be as patient and work in the tiny little circles and tiny little ovals and keep their pencil really sharp. They're getting used to everything, and those sorts of things are not super important to them in the beginning, or it's hard to get a newer student to really focus on that. So with these, I was working a little bit more how a beginner typically would work. I'm being messy. And the thing that was crazy is it blended out completely smooth anyway. And that's going to be really, I think, encouraging for a new artist when they're getting started and where they may get frustrated in getting colored pencils to blend well. This blends really easily, really well. And that was very unexpected for me. If you remember, I had done a review a while back of the Derwent Color Soft, and those did not layer and blend using my techniques well at all. These do. These, look how I'm holding the pencil to the side sometimes. I mean, I am being as sloppy as you can be, and it didn't matter at all. Really blended out well. Now, as I go through this, I am putting a lot of layers on here just so that the OMS, the odorless mineral spirits, do have something to work with. Little tip there for you. If you are not used to using odorless mineral spirits, or if you've used them and you didn't get great results, chances are you didn't have enough pencil on the paper to start with. That's usually the problem most people have when working with OMS and it not quite doing what they wanted it to do. So you can see I keep going layer over layer over layer before I blend out. And I'm using a combination of that aqua color. I've got a blue and I mixed that in with some green and then the black over the edges. My first time layering it or blending it out with the odorless mineral spirits, it's going to have a fairly dull look when that dries. That's completely normal. Don't panic or be frustrated thinking it didn't do what you wanted it to do. It's going to take a couple of layers to get the color saturation where I want. That's totally normal. That brush is just a cheapy Taklon bristled filbert. Those are generally my favorite or my go-to when blending with colored pencil. Oftentimes people will ask if you can blend your colored pencils with water, only if you're using Inktense or watercolor pencils. These are a wax-based pencil, so that's not going to play well or really do a whole lot with water. You remember your science classes when you were a kid? Oil and water, or wax and water in this case, they don't really play nicely together. Finish blending that out. Now I need to let this dry completely before I go on to my next layer. The videos, when they're sped up like this, they're a little bit deceiving. It looks like I just instantly start working over that same area. No, that had to dry for a good 10 minutes or so. Now, as I move through, I am starting to burnish. And what burnishing is, you're pushing harder with the pencil. And it is a method that you can use to blend and get really smooth blending. But the thing is, when you burnish, you're damaging the tooth of the paper. You're pushing harder. You're jamming the pencil into the paper to get that smooth result. So if you're going to burnish, make sure that you don't plan to go on top of that with too many more layers, because you just flatten the tooth of the paper, which means the pencil doesn't have a whole lot to grip to. But as I get onto additional layers here, you are going to see me burnish a lot more, where I am pushing harder with that pencil. We're really testing everything with these pencils, but they did great with burnishing too. Burnishing or OMS, they both blended beautifully. The results were very, very similar, and they burnished easier. I didn't find that I had to push as hard with these as I would with, say, an oil-based pencil. Now, the thing that I found to be so surprising with these is, one, it actually took more layers than I expected to. When I did an initial little test on a live stream, some of you guys were there for that, I didn't think they were going to take very many layers. They felt like because they are so waxy, that they just kind of hit their limit within maybe 2 layers. No, when I actually started working and blending it out, that wasn't the case. I was able to get quite a few more layers on there as long as I kept a lighter hand throughout this. Now, another thing that was very surprising to me, these feel very, very much like Prismacolor. You guys know I complain about Prismacolor a lot because the breakage, it drives me insane. I won't even use those pencils anymore. It's just too frustrating. That, and most of them aren't light fast anyway. Well, not most, but maybe half aren't light fast anyway. Somebody's going to fact check me on that number there. I don't remember the exact number, but many of them are not light fast. Anyway, the softer lead is really nice for blending because you get this smooth blending, which is wonderful, but it also, the downside is it's going to be more prone to breaking. So with these pencils, they felt a lot like using Prismacolor, except there was no breaking. That was a huge surprise for me on a lead this soft. These held up really well. Through the whole piece of working through this, I had the lead break once. And I think it was just a random defect, the way the front part of the lead just kind of came back out. It was just a little piece once in the entire piece. That is crazy, because I was burnishing. I was pushing really hard on some of these layers, and these pencils held up to it perfect. Like, they had no problem. Another thing with these pencils, they're very thin, like they're skinny little pencils. So I kind of expected that to work against them and make them more prone to breaking. Like, okay, there's not a lot of substance here. No, they were fine. And as far as like comfort of holding these pencils being thinner versus maybe a thicker, like the light fast pencil, it's not that, like, I didn't notice it while I was working on it. It was just when I initially picked it up, I was like, oh, these feel really skinny. So once I got my background in there, and now that background, you can see as it zoomed in here, it's a little bit blotchy. I could have gotten that smoother if I used good techniques, a sharper pencil, and worked in smaller ovals and circles. I definitely think these pencils could get a more smooth finish there. I was just going through this very, very quickly, so I wasn't too worried about it. But even that, look at how smooth that blending is right under the turtle, where I was using pretty terrible techniques. I mean, I wasn't nearly scribbling and it still blended so smooth. So very impressed with that. Now, as I'm working onto these smaller details, these pencils aren't the best for details. I would rather use my Lightfast or Polychromos or something that is an oil, a harder pencil is going to be easier to get small details, but they still were able to do details. So it's not a situation where they can't handle it, but they wouldn't be my first choice. For a lot of these smaller areas, I'm going to be burnishing a bit more than using the odorless mineral spirits. When I get into larger sections, then I'll go back to the OMS. And I'm just mapping out where my general lights and darks go. You can see again here how many colors are in that set. I was really impressed with the color selection. I don't often say that on smaller sets, but it really is a good color selection. You do have everything you need to mix everything else you need. So one of the things that happens for a lot of artists when they get started with colored pencil, they get overwhelmed by the just sheer number of pencils available. If you've got a set of 100 or 150 and you're having a hard time choosing what colors to go with, having so many options definitely can make things a bit of a challenge. So one of the things that I recommend for artists who are struggling with choosing color, use less colors. And this is definitely a good set for that, just a good basic set. Or you could even go down to a 12 set. And this is going to teach you to learn to blend from what you have. I mean, in parts of this, I wanted a deeper teal. I had to mix that by using my dark denim blue mixed in with my green to get that more teal sort of greenish blue color I was going for in some of these areas. Having less colors, you are going to learn so much more about color mixing and color blending than for somebody who is starting with a bigger set. Now, of course, I always prefer bigger sets. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying for anybody who is newer to colored pencils or any medium really, and you're struggling with, I just don't know what color to choose, use less colors and just mix and blend and layer from what you have. You really will learn so much more. But this did feel like a very complete set of colors. So that was great. I mean, anytime you're looking for a potential brand that you would recommend to students when you're asked for something that you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, but you want to get started, that is a huge, huge bonus with this set. I didn't feel like I had to say, get these, but also you're going to need 1 or 2 colors from this other set. You can do everything with this set. I mean, except create Lightfast artwork. We're going to blend these larger areas out, and I'm layering a lot of colors. I've got blues, I've got browns, and I just overlap where I want them to softly fade from one to the next. I overlap just along the edges, the blue into the brown. That way when I blend it, you get that nice soft transition. Now the moss I'm filling in first with just that light green, and that is because I'm going to come back through this with the slice tool. And the slice tool is kind of like an X-Acto knife, but with I think they said it's a ceramic blade. I don't know, feels plastic to me. You guys can let me know. I probably have that information wrong. But I'm going to start with a really thick layer, and I did burnish for parts of this. Thick layer of that lighter green, and then I'm going to go, there's a slice tool. I'm going to go over it with a darker green, darker blue, some purples, and then when I come through with a slice tool, what I'll be doing is scraping away some of those darker colors and exposing this light green. Now the slice tool I find works best if you've got a lighter, thicker base layer, so where you've burnished like I did on that moss. Then if let's say I used a darker layer and blended with OMS versus burnishing where it's not on as thick, and then I go on top of that with lighter layers. When I scrape that away with the slice tool, there's not enough contrast between the lights and the darks because it kind of lightens the darks that were under it. None of that's making sense. Point is, it doesn't work well. It definitely works better in my experience if you start with the lighter layer like I've done here with the green. I'm just scribbling this on and pushing pretty hard, just burnishing, making a horribly hot mess there. And once that gets on there, I can go ahead and blend with the OMS a bit. But watch what will happen when I come through with the slice tool and get all of these great highlights. So it's really nice for little tiny, tiny details. There we go. Pulling these little scribbly highlights out. So it's almost like using a scratchboard technique. And I've done that a few times. Definitely like it best when I do a light layer first and then the dark on top. As I go through this, I am going to start reforming these clumps and clusters of the moss there. So I want definite lights and darks. I don't, while initially I was scribbling, I don't want to leave it where it's just scribbled randomly. I want definite areas where you can see the highlights are on clumps of that moss. We're going to go ahead and block this in now. And for all of these sections of the fins, I'm using brown and blue with a bit of purple in some areas to get that dark black. I'm not actually using the black pencil. By mixing the brown and the blue, that's going to make it look a little bit deeper, give you a little bit more depth than just using flat black. We'll go ahead and block in the little wrinkles in here, parts of his shell. And I'm using the purple pencil here. Derwent makes some of the best purple pencils. Like, the color is just really nice. My favorites of theirs, if you're looking for a good purple pencil but you want light fast, the violet and the nightshade out of the light fast set, oh my gosh, they are absolutely amazing. And I recently just got their magenta pencil. That is also another must-have for me now. Really nice colors. And here I want the back of the fin just to fade out into that background, so I'm using a lot of the same background colors there, just along the edges, and then I've got the lighter colors in the center. I'm going to use a product called Touch of Texture and Titanium White Mixture from Brush and Pencil for my brightest highlights. I will end up painting that on, so I don't need anything to be super, super white here. If I did, I would have put the white pencil down first, anywhere where I wanted it to stay really, really bright. But knowing that I'm going to come back over it with the Touch of Texture Titanium White Mixture, I can go a little bit darker and not worry about it, because I am going to paint those highlights on. And the Touch of Texture Titanium White Mixture, that is the only product that you can paint on colored pencil at the time of filming this that is archival. Acrylic paint, gel pen, none of that is going to be archival. It is not going to stick long term. Now, in the case of this, where the pencils aren't light fast anyway, it isn't that big of a deal. You can kind of get away with using whatever you want, but that is the product that I'm using here. And then this is a product I use on all of my colored pencil pieces. You get really, really nice highlights there. And the great thing is it adds a bit more tooth back to the paper. So I can go back over that. Let's say, like here on the moss, I wanted little bits of yellow. Well, if I put yellow pencil right over the dark blue background, it's not going to show up. I'm just going to kind of tint it green, but I'm not going to get yellow. Here, once this dries, I can go over those areas with yellow. And even though it's on top of blue, because I put that white base, that yellow will show up really nicely. See how that yellow goes right over those so well. Use the slice tool for a few more highlights on there. Now you'll notice that the color on this looks fairly faded. That is just because the light on my easel overexposes everything. So I can see things really well, but in filming it, it does look a bit washed out. The finished painting looks like what the finished photograph that I'm showing you here at the end will be. So you can see the just absolutely beautiful color saturation with these. And fast, that's the part I just could not get over, how fast that color took. I mean, it blew me away. I am not used to that with colored pencils. There we go. Look at the, I mean, just really nice color saturation. And if you look closely at the background, you can see you've got a little bit of that grainy, gritty look. And that was because I was using such sloppy technique early on. If you worked in the smaller circles and ovals, you could achieve the higher, or get it to be a lot more blended. But in this case, with these pencils, for me, the whole point, if I ever use them again, would most likely be in a sketchbook, because that's something I'm not going to care if it's light fast or not. I am not going to be using these on my work that I need to be light fast, that I need to be able to sell the original artwork for. This is not going to be a fit for me. But if I want to get something done really, really quickly and get good color saturation really quickly, great pencil for that. If I want a pencil for a student who doesn't want to invest a lot of money, but they want to see if they even like colored pencil, this is going to be the one I likely recommend moving forward. I'm not going to go over everything on their FAQ page, but I do want to cover a couple of things that I know have come up. People have been asking me. I'll put a link if you want to read this whole thing in the video description. So when are Chromaflow pencils going to be available to purchase? They are available in certain markets in spring 2021. They will be available first in the US and India. You know, India, I know you guys have trouble sometimes getting quality art supplies, so I'm kind of happy for you that you got first dibs in here on these. The biggest question most people have is going to be about the Lightfast, and this is what Derwent says. Specific Lightfast ratings for these pencils are not published, but they have been tested to perform comparably to other branded Lightfast products in a similar price range. Okay, I kind of want to decipher that for you guys, or translate that. Similar price range pencils, they're not very Lightfast. So if these pencils performed like they were excellent Lightfast ratings, a company's gonna be screaming that from the rooftop. Lightfast testing, expensive. Lightfast pencils, everyone wants. If these tested as being Lightfast, seriously, they're gonna be screaming that from the rooftops. I take this as a nice way of saying these are not Lightfast. Now, certain colors just naturally are going to be Lightfast, so I'm not saying there are no Lightfast pencils in this set. I mean, black, white, you're pretty safe. But your other colors, I would not even chance in my professional quality work because we don't know those numbers. I don't know if that's something they'll ever release, but as of right now, yeah, don't plan on those being Lightfast because we're looking at the difference in the price range. And I mentioned this briefly earlier. A Lightfast pencil is expensive to produce. These pencils are on the inexpensive side. They're great for somebody getting started with colored pencil who doesn't want to invest a whole lot but wants to give them a try. This is a great pencil for that. But in keeping the price low, you are going to sacrifice certain things, like being Lightfast or using more Lightfast pigment. So just something to be aware of because a lot of people have questioned whether or not they might really be Lightfast, and it's like, no. If they did the testing, they would have been screaming that from the rooftop if these were Lightfast. But we have to balance whether it is going to be an inexpensive pencil versus a Lightfast pencil. Now, I would personally prefer them to be Lightfast, but I get the draw of having it, no pun intended, of having a pencil that is going to be more suitable for somebody who does not want to spend a whole lot of money to get started. They go on to say, the Lightfast performance is similar to other highly pigmented products within the Derwent range of professional quality pencils. However, if fade resistance is one of the most important factors when choosing your pencils, we would recommend the Derwent Lightfast range, as every pencil in that collection is guaranteed not to fade for 100 years. Which just confirms what I previously said. You know, there is going to be a difference, and there is a difference in price. The Derwent Lightfast pencils are not an inexpensive pencil. Worth it, hands down. But they're not, most people just getting started with a medium or wanting to see if they even like colored pencils probably don't want to invest that much money to start with. So I think that's where the Chromaflow come in. The next on this list is, are there plans to bring out a wider range of colors? Their answer is, there are no immediate plans to extend Chromaflow beyond the current 24 colors we have in the range, but we are always keen to hear artist feedback on the products, including requests for additional colors. We need to be requesting that. And that kind of comes into the next point here. Will Derwent Chromaflow pencils be available to purchase in single colors? There are no current plans to make Derwent Chromaflow pencils available as single colors. So what does that mean? They're not open stock. If you run through a pencil and you love that pencil and you want that specific pencil again, you're gonna have to get a full new set. And that's always, I don't like when companies don't have stuff as open stock. So for me, not a fan of that. And this is why. Let's go through these pencils. So here is the denim color. Here, we'll put these side by side and see if I can get these to show up. Block my face. There we go. Look at the difference here. How much of that denim that I used, well, line them up more equally. There we go. Look at that, how much of that denim was used. I have burned through that pencil, and that's from this one drawing. I burned through it pretty quickly. I do want to say, I didn't burn through them quickly because they were breaking constantly, like another brand that shall remain unnamed. I just laid down that much color. I used that much of the pencil. If I want that specific pencil again, I would have to buy the whole set. Now, on the flip side of that, Derwent's color line, it's the same through all of their whole brand. So that denim pencil, I could go get that in the Lightfast pencil, and it's gonna be the same color. It's just gonna be a more oil-based pencil versus the wax-based. So there will be a difference there. But you can get the same color, you're just not gonna get the same formulation. So that is something that you want to be aware of with these. They are not available open stock. So we know that these pencils perform amazingly, amazingly well. who are they really for? Who should buy these? Are they going to be for you? If you're looking for a light fast pencil, you're working on artwork that you are going to sell, these are not for you. You want to go with the Derwent light fast range is going to be a better option, or any other pencil that is going to be light fast. So these would not be a fit in that scenario. But let's say a beginner artist, whether that be a kid or an adult, you're just getting started, I think these would be a great pencil to learn on. They're almost going to feel easier to use than a higher oil-based content pencil because they blend so easily. So easily. So I think the main person who is going to love this pencil, beginner or even kids, they're inexpensive enough that I would, let's say I was working with a child or teaching a kid to work, or they just wanted a set of colored pencils. These are great. These are really a nice set. The other person who might enjoy these is if you are a professional and you want a pencil that lays down very quick for a sketchbook. Sketchbook art where you're not really going to be selling it, you're not worried about that, these would absolutely be a fit for you for that. They laid down so fast. I mean, 4 hours. That sea turtle, 4 hours, start to finish. That is an 14 inches by 7.5 inches. That's big. 4 hours, and that included dry time. So the actual artwork was probably 3 hours. I worked on Stonehenge. Stonehenge takes a long time to dry. That was a very fast project. So if you're looking for something you want to maybe make layouts for your artwork, get ideas for things that you're going to do in a more elaborate piece, like I am for this one, I'm going to do this same painting, but bigger, and kind of develop the idea a little bit more. This is going to be a great pencil for you for that. I don't want to use my more expensive light fast pencils in a sketchbook because that's going to get expensive, and I don't care if work in a sketchbook is light fast. So I think these would be a really good pencil for professional artists in their sketchbooks. My hope with these pencils, please Derwent, please extend this line. I would love to see this formula in a light fast pencil with more colors. They're amazing. This would be such a great addition to our professional pencils. I loved working with them, and I didn't expect that. And so that's why at the beginning of the video I brought up, I didn't have high expectations. And so that might be part of why I loved them so much. I wasn't expecting much. So when they performed really well, I was just like, I was giddy. It doesn't take much. I don't get out much. It takes very little to make me giddy. These pencils did it for me. I was so excited working with them. That's why I finished it in 4 hours in one night. I didn't plan on finishing that piece in a single night. I was seeing so much progression because I did lay down so fast that I stayed up late that night. I just wanted to finish. It was fun. It's fun and kind of unusual with colored pencil, unless you're working on sanded paper, to see a pencil lay down so quick and get that level of color saturation. They're wonderful. Derwent, please make more of these pencils, but light fast. They are amazing. You know, except for the not light fast thing. That part's not so amazing. Have you subscribed yet? If not, I have a handy button right there. It's round, has an orange arrow going towards it. If you click on that, that'll help you to keep up to date with all of my new art videos every single week. Also click on the bell notification icon because YouTube otherwise probably won't notify you when a new video goes up. I've also got my email newsletter, which I send out once a week, letting you know whatever videos I had go live and what live streams are coming.